Hello and welcome to the 25th of September 2025 edition of the weekly meeting for the working group of AI Conformance. Please be advised that this meeting is under the Code of Conduct of the Kubernetes project, which in short means be excellent to your fellow attendees and speakers. Do we have someone who can take notes? So I guess it will be a group effort. All right. Please, everyone, add yourself to the meeting document. And yes, so last week we had the discussion about adding 1.33 as certifiable version for AI Conformance. This was followed by an additional discussion within SIG Arch to figure out a process for future topics on how things can evolve or will evolve in their rights, and also who will get a say on this. We would like to postpone this discussion at least until next week because we had a couple of folks who reached out who are not in this week's meeting. However, there was an agreement reached with the SIG Arch chairs and also some SIG testing chairs to have a to basically switch it to a lazy consensus. The lazy consensus ended, I believe, on September the 23rd, anywhere on Earth, with no one raising their voice. So it will basically, there will now be a Kubernetes 1.33 added as a certifiable version for AI Conformance. As soon as the restructure pull request is merged into the CNCF repository, we will basically add the template for 1.33 as agreed, with moving one of the requirements to should, which has been a must for 1.33, 34, so that it is a should now for 1.33. And this is the change for support dynamic resource allocation, DIA APIs to enable more flexible and fine-grained resource requests beyond simple counts. The reason why this is a should is because in Kubernetes 1.33, the DIA feature is not available as GA versions. Any comments to this topic? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. All right. Next up, we would like to continue with the open topics for AI Conformance. Let me share my screen. And I'm not logged in.
I actually did have one question. So for the must for 1.33, I was looking at the list and it still isn't as clear to me like what, like we haven't really talked about testing of the MUS, correct? Like what like for conformance, like what exactly is like the output there, or is it?
It's a documentation of the feature in a public available documentation that can be cross-checked by the CNCF, because the CNCF is doing as in the Kubernetes conformance, the check for the certification itself.
Okay, so for something like gang scheduling, we would say like if we had docs showing like Q or Volcano working on this vendor, that would be sufficient.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
okay, and then for the custom CRD one, is it just any AI framework that is external to Kubernetes we just include? Or we could show like we can install other CRDs?
Yes, because it's not about king making, because anything else would be king making if we would name a specific framework.
Okay then. All right, thanks.
Juan.
By the way, someone from the Slack channel has studied the effort of putting together the conformance tests. I don't know if we are too early for that. Like, if not, like, where do we want that conversation to happen? Like, I don't think that person can join the community call because they might be in a different time zone. So this is going to be challenging time for them to join.
I mean, we could opt for moving meetings bi-weekly, but basically switching, having APEC friendly meetings. So like 1 week APEC friendly, 1 week America friendly. This is at least what has been done in other 6. The only side topic would be that usually it's someone from Europe would need to attend both meetings so that the discussion is not lost in between of those 2 meetings, to give basically an update.
Yeah, I wonder if like they want to attend the meetings though, like maybe they prefer like discussions async, and whether this group, like whether we need like additional coordinations with other SIGs, like SIG testing and release. I just don't know like what the best venue is for the discussion to happen.
So I saw that Jack started an issue on our GitHub repo for discussing the test of one of the requirement, which is the secure accelerator one. So I think maybe we can start a different GitHub project for discussing the test. So this one is discussing how we want to define the requirements. And then we can have another project for discussing how we run tests for each must requirement, and then eventually evolve into conformance test that can be running somewhere that we can all reuse.
Yeah, I just want to make sure like people get together on that effort, like not like duplicating the effort.
There was the question raised, does the effort already make sense for this implementation to start?
Yeah, I mean, just what I meant by that is like I saw like these persons like starting to implement tests. So my question is like, are we already in that place to start like implementing?
I mean, I would not prevent people from exploring options on how to automatically test features. Andre.
Yeah, just a quick question. Do we know how it works for working group, sorry, for Kubernetes conformance? Usually I know SIG testing is responsible to write those tests, but do they have any process like to writing those tests?
I don't think that SIG testing is responsible for writing tests. I think the
Oh, right.
obligation lies with each of the SIGs who is basically moving an API endpoint to graduate it. That SIG testing is just the governing body around it, as far as I understood it.
Yeah, the process is that there's end-to-end test in the conformance. There's end-to-end test, and that's reviewed by each SIG, each owning SIG, and then eventually they can decide to promote an end-to-end test into conformance test, and that requires approval from SIG architecture. But for AI conformance, we didn't start with test, we start with requirements. So we need to figure out how we turn these requirements into test, and then for next week we can discuss the process we want.
So I mean, we always will have two different discussion streams. One discussion stream is, or one outcome of the SIG was to basically start creating a set of how to test those requirements that we created over the time. And the other one is to define and to basically make a process of when requirements become must and or move from should to must, and also to set like the groundwork of the requirements. So I think that the whole discussion should happen in parallel, but we should also reach out to the corresponding SIGs who are affected by this or can potentially give input.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Next up, and please help me out here because I was not here when this was discussed the last time. Where do I need to jump in? Is it in the to-do or is it in the in progress list?
The to-do, the in progress are the ones we already discussed.
Okay, then hardware topology awareness. I will quickly read it out. Should, for nodes with specialized hardware topologies, information about the physical layout of accelerators and their proximity to high-performance network interfaces should be discoverable in a structured manner. This includes, but is not limited to, direct high-speed interconnects between accelerators, the alignment of accelerators and NICs on the node physical topology. This information should be exposed via DRA attributes if supported by accelerator and driver to enable topology-aware scheduling. All right. Any input on this topic? Any change request? Any discussion item on this?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, this is kind of a. I've been talking with a lot of people in the background on this one. It's kind of a mess right now. there was no standardization, so some cloud vendors have kind of exposed their own topology. It depends on the instances, whether or not those APIs are available. And I don't know if anything is really set in place for how bare metal providers actually label this. I was doing some research and I can see, at least on AWS and GCP, there are some options. And some of the code does live in the cloud providers, but it's kind of hard for me to even follow, to be honest. So I'm a little unclear on like what the ask is here.
The focus of this one is about using DRA to provide some standardization. So I think it's okay for something that's not standardized yet to be part of the recommendation, because if it's already standardized, then we don't really need to recommend it. We can put it in a must requirement. The recommendation that we're making is supposed to signal a direction or a vision that we want to achieve before something is really standardized. If taking that into consideration, do you see problems with using DRA, or do you have other alternative you want for this?
I don't know what it means by using DRA in this case. There is some work from the DRA community that just was opened up this week about trying to use DRA to expose node topology, but it was more of like, it seemed to be more of like a proof of concept rather than anything close to a standard. I don't see the usual suspects of that on the call, but I mean, it sounds like this is a recommendation that there should be some way to do this, and the Kubernetes community has to kind of figure that out. It's kind of how I'm reading this.
Yes.
And then I guess we are in agreement then.
So what would be the agreement? I mean, it is currently a should requirement. Or Kevin, are you now basically saying that we are moving this completely out, or is it
In my opinion, reading these, I think we have the must, and then we have a should, and a concern I have is like, when does it should become a must, and then when is there like a recommendation to the Kubernetes community to basically figure your stuff out? And this feels a little bit like this is a recommendation that like we need something in place to enable this, but we aren't really anywhere close to moving this into a must, right? And so I don't know, like I'm struggling a little bit on like there are two layers of shoulds in my opinion, and maybe they're like, I don't know if we have like recommendations that we know need to be worked on. And that's kind of how I feel this is. Go on, Andre.
yeah, but that's the idea of a should, but Henry, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think the question probably we should answer whether this conformance program will drive Kubernetes community to find the solutions, because I think the problem is if the solution will take 2 years or 3 years for cloud native Kubernetes community to resolve, probably doesn't really make sense for us even have this shoot. On the other hand, like if we put this in the constraint that we as a community should solve this, like similar to gang scheduling, right? There is no right now a way in Kubernetes to perform gang scheduling out of the box, but we put this in the must because we already have the good alternatives, and the community is going to work to support this in core API. So the question is here, like probably we should have some feedback from the working room device management or other folks who actively working on it. It's like, what is the stage and where they're planning to have this in the core and maybe more socialized, etc. Otherwise, if it takes 3 years to be generalized, maybe it doesn't make sense to even discuss it, right? I hope that makes sense.
I mean, I agree partially, but on the other hand, we also had parts of Kubernetes which took 10 years until they moved into a GA. So I don't know if I mean we have something that is looking into this, and I agree that we should potentially talk with the relevant SIG what their process is and where they think this will go. But if we have it as a potential future part of Kubernetes itself already written down as a cap, yes, a cap can change and a cap can die and whatsoever, but if it is already there, there's a discussion around it, so it comes not out of completely utterly nowhere, right? It's not a requirement that we just thought about. And we also there should be the possibility to have the conformance as a living thing, right? Something can move, or things will move from should to must potentially, or some things won't move from should to must. Potentially, we also figure out that some things are not relevant anymore because the whole ecosystem is changing. So we will always need to adopt to the process of changes to the conformance program.
So I think for some of the should, we might need some SIG to partner with us to put the item on their roadmap. A lot of the DRA or accelerator related recommendations are probably need the DRA people to put those on the roadmap.
On this front, like, so what do we so when we say putting this item to the SIG's roadmap, like, do we consider like all of those solutions should be part of Kubernetes? Because, for example, Volcano has network topology, right? And some folks using Volcano in production for many years. Do we say that if distribution or vendor use Volcano for their scheduler and use this API to address this hardware topology awareness, do they conform it with this issue? So I'd love to understand, like, from your perspective, like, is there something that we want to expect from SIGs and from Kubernetes, or there is something we kind of expect from the community, from the broader ecosystem?
I think this will come back to how we want to define the process. So in the Kubernetes conformance, it's all within Kubernetes. Each conformance item has its own SIG and final approval by SIG architecture, but maybe we need to think about how we want to run the process, like what's the approval process, and then how do we graduate a requirement from should to a must? We can discuss that next week, and we can take the time to think about the right process.
I mean, if we don't reach a consensus on specific things, we also need to think about how do we handle this? Is this then just completely removed or stopped or moved into an icebox and brought up in a later stage when development has advanced a little bit more? And I think the one thing that I feel we are still a little bit missing is like the main beneficiary from those conformance tests are end users, like who are using Kubernetes platforms to run AI workloads, and basically their input would be interesting also to like dictate requirements that they have towards AI platforms, or what they would like to have in AI or platforms that run AI workload.
Yeah, but I think like what I want to say, if you took in the reality, unfortunately, Kubernetes in the core is not ready for a broader scope of AI workloads, right? And I think we discussed it initially when we started the Conformance program. That is why I was asking, what do we mean by core? What APIs we should support, etc. So because like it may take a lot of years to make Kubernetes conformant with all those complexity of AI workloads, we might need to be flexible here. Which means like I don't know how we're going to configure those tests, but like it's a question like whether we want to show the power of those cloud technologies running on Kubernetes and be flexible in the way, like for example, like using other projects like KQ or Volcano or whatever, like implements those capabilities to address those shoots. Or we want to be very strict and then wait for a couple of years for SIX and working up to address those problems in the core. Yeah, I mean, just a suggestion. I don't know. Maybe we can find some alternatives here. Yeah, go ahead, Justin.
I think looking at this particular hardware topology awareness issue in the AI conformance profile, I think it is actually, it answers that question, or it's proposing an answer to that question, right? Like it is saying, we believe there's a problem in Kubernetes today where like the topology awareness is not, the topology information is not published in Kubernetes. We believe it should be published, and it should be published exposed via DRA attributes if supported by blah, 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 right? So I think that's basically what we want. We are saying, look, we know that Kubernetes isn't entirely ready. This is a should, therefore this is a should, not a must. When you start publishing those attributes or publishing that information, please publish it via DRA attributes if there are attributes to publish. You won't fail the test if you don't, but at some point in the future, we will graduate this to a must. So you will fail the test if you don't. And so don't do anything else, right? And if we disagree on that direction, this is the place to discuss it. We are sort of pushing a requirement onto DRA, which is, or the DRA drivers, which is, a little, I don't know about the process there, but I think they're here, or they certainly are not far away. So I think I'm okay with that. But I think in terms of this specific, the way it's phrased, I think it's actually pretty good, right? Like, yes, this will stay in should until, well, I mean, honestly, there's a lot of get out of jail free cards, right? If supported by, but I think I'm fine with it staying in should for an extended period of time. I think it's the right direction. I think it's well written. I think it's everything. I think we should keep it as is. I don't think we should make it a must yet because of, it's not fully baked, but I think it seems like the right direction, and I know of no better alternative.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that is fine, but I think maybe it's a little unclear to me, like the stages of a should. It's kind of my point. Like this is like a should with work needed, and then there's also shoulds that are like ready to graduate. And it's really unclear, like looking at this, like how far away, like I don't know how to tell like when this could be a must. And like that's kind of what I'm trying to get at with all these shoulds, is there's levels to these, and I would like maybe a little bit more clarity on like what is actually actionable right now versus what requires work.
I don't know. more along that thought, uh, should there be like some criteria that we can come up with that, okay, that there are more than one production DRA drivers available for each area here, like networking or any other kind of driver here, and which are widely deployable across clouds and other disconnected platforms. So we know that, okay, yes, it's not just in one specific thing that this works. There are plenty of drivers available, and you can pick and choose and deploy them across a wide variety of configurations.
I mean, we have two questions now that we are discussing. And I quickly want to jump on the one from Kevin. I agree we should figure out a timeline for things which will go from should to must, but on the other hand, I would also treat it a little bit like we have alpha, we have beta, and then we have GA in for API endpoints in Kubernetes. And this is basically I would see it in a similar way for like musts and shoulds. If it's GA, if a must is something that is universal, that is needed from everyone and needs to be standardized for everyone. And a should is like, it's nice to have, but it won't break you if you don't have it. And the state of an endpoint, and we know that features can stay in beta for an extended period of time, and sometimes PSPs will never make it, for example, right? So I would just treat it loosely, and also communicate that these are should requirements, and they reflect the current state of what the community is aiming towards. And this potentially will get a must, but it will also like follow the process, which TBD, to move there, and yeah, continue from there.
Yeah, I agree with this direction. And also those should requirements are more for answering the question of lack of a standard, because there is no standard. So we propose one alternative that is for people who don't have an opinion, they can follow this. And then we can keep evolving the should requirements until there's a standard, then we can promote it into a must.
So coming back, and also to get back to Runald's point, do we want to keep this as a should? Do we want to icebox it and potentially add it as a should in the future?
I think what I'm trying to raise here is like, what is the criteria by which we evaluate the shoulds, and if there is a path to graduate it towards a must, or to say that, oh, okay, no, this didn't actually pan out, so it should be deprecated or no longer be considered towards a must. And I think all these shoulds probably fall in different buckets in terms of how far they are towards graduating to a must, and what our criteria really is like for forward-looking things. So I'm not against keeping this as a should, but I just want clarification on when we can say this becomes a must.
We can say this becomes a must when there's a clear standard in Kubernetes. And we can also discuss define a graduation requirement in the next meeting.
Yeah, I think we should have graduation requirements for each should. And like, yeah, what do we mean when we say becomes a standard, right? Like wide adoption. Then again, okay, how do we quantify that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this would also solve a lot of other discussion topics, because then there's a clear way for each of the requirements, when it will move into the must stage. It is more work to figure this out, and also we should I'm sorry, it's late. Re-evaluate this for each of the requirements once in a while, because given circumstances can change. But this would then also be a good direction to have like an acceptance, and would separate it from moving it to something like a vote or something like a community decision to a more reasonable process.
Yeah.
Okay, so we said for this we would add as requirement, and please someone help me out because as mentioned it's late.
Yeah, I can help you out.
Yeah, just comment on the issue itself, and then we can basically move this from to in progress and have the requirement in there. The only thing that this means that we need to go back to the old shoulds that we have discussed and add their graduation requirements. But this is potentially something that we can also do async. Are we good with this, or is there any concern on this way forward? All right. Should we go now into the next open topic, or should we go back to the old ones that we discussed?
I think it's the to-dos.
Sorry, I didn't get this. Can you repeat, Kevin?
I think Janet was saying that the in progress is stuff we've already kind of discussed. Not exactly sure what action all these are, but I think we are talking about the to-dos here.
Yeah. I was just asking because we now added like the requirement for moving into a yeah, okay, exactly. When we move forward. Okay, then let's go with high performance storage part 1. High performance storage should, if the platform offers block file storage explicitly optimized for high IOPS throughput AI workloads, it should be exposed via storage class resources. Any comments around this?
Maybe the better, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know this area well enough to know if this is a good or a bad request. Is there a way we could tag like SIG storage on this? Or I don't know if there's somebody on this call that is familiar with these APIs and knows where this ecosystem is.
I can take it to SIG storage to get their input.
Okay, thank you, Janet. Mario, if you're talking, I can't hear you.
Ah, yes, I hard muted myself. I'm sorry. Should provide at least one storage class baked by a high-performance container storage interface driver that offers read-write many access suitable for AI ML workloads, such as collaborative development environments, for example, Jupyter Hub, and shared data caching. Support this capability for at least one of the following patterns: high-performance shared file systems, for example, Lustre, object storage potentially provisioned with local caching and presented as a file system. Potentially the same, right?
Yeah, I would
Getting
say,
input.
yeah, I
ahead,
just want to say, I
Andrew.
think we didn't really cover a lot about interactive workloads during this AI conformance discussion, because all those capabilities would make sense when you have more kind of interactive environment with, Jupyter Lab, etc. I just don't know, like, whether we consider this as part of AI workloads.
I would say yes.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, if we consider this as AI workloads, we might need to also think about preemption, priority classes, like how you're going to reallocate GPUs, and more. Because I don't think there is a very known problem of interactive AI workloads in Kubernetes as of now. Like, there is some work going on, but not sure if this is specifically for this, or this is also about how you can quickly access data between multiple nodes.
Andrew, do you think this is something we can get input from the Kubeflow notebooks folks?
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely discuss with Jupyter Hub or Notebooks working group. I just like, first of all, maybe I want to ask Janet, like, since you added this shoot, like, what was your main, what was the main goal to add in this?
I think the main goal is for users to know to provide a standard for users to follow so that it makes it easier for them to run the same workloads in all different platforms. That's so the overall goal of AI Conformance is for AI workloads to be portable across different platforms. And I use that goal to figure out what are the top AI workloads types that users are running, and from there derive what could be the recommendation or requirements we can specify in a platform.
Yeah, because like what I noticed that as of now, Yes, many folks using Kubernetes to deploy Jupyter-based environments and run them to perform interactive ID for their data scientists. But the thing is, like, there is no really standardization on the way how those file system has been managed there. Yeah, so I don't think we have a SEEK even in Kubernetes who is responsible for interactive workloads.
But I think we also have the goal of making sure that people can run AI workloads on Kubernetes easily. And if it can support all types of AI workloads, that's the best.
Yeah, so I think the question we should answer here, like, do we consider those interactive environments as, yeah, workloads, or it's something which actually gives user experience to trigger those workloads, which can be interactive? Yeah. Can we go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, we have talked a bit about this in like working group batch, I guess, and I know working group surveying has kind of, well, I don't know if they've touched on this one, but I don't know if we need a designated SIG or a working group for the interactive case. Like they should be well represented in with batch or serving, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, I think this is, I mean, I would say yes and no, because I think there is not really a lot of investigation in terms of what does it mean in terms of interactive GPU workloads. Because, for example, on the Spark side, there is, well-known idea of how you can run transformation and make them interactive. So basically run Spark jobs and quickly get results so you can have high performance access to your data so you can get quickly results. But I don't think there is much work going on in terms of interactive GPU workloads. Like, for example, I have my model, I want to test something, I want to maybe see how my how it actually performs on some amount of data without actually submitting the batch job. So all this work is not really yet been well developed. And I guess right now, mostly Jupyter Hub or other ID is just used to kick off those batch jobs. Right, so I don't see a lot of really investigation in the Kubernetes community. If that makes sense. So I think like overall for this I think that makes sense. Just probably we should maybe make it simplified, and the file system aspect here maybe just make it more specific on for what type of workload we're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as I'm involved in like working group batch, I would ask that if there are problems with like interactive workloads in Kubernetes, that it could be a good place to bring those up. I have not really seen that community really engaging with Kubernetes about like the problems they experience. So don't really know like what is the problem with like using something like a job with a service and like why that is not sufficient in this case. But maybe we
Yes,
can call
yeah.
that one offline.
I think even managing Spark workloads on Kubernetes, right? Like how you connect your notebook to the Spark cluster and then run some transformations there on Kubernetes in a reliable way. How you're managing your files, how you're getting access to your data frames. I don't think there is much work going on in this space.
Yeah, I mean, you know better than I do. I can only say I haven't seen much input from the community in those spaces to know what problems actually do exist. So it'd be nice to hear that.
Okay, so next step would be getting input from batch working group and potentially folks from Jupyter Hub, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would go to the source here and maybe see if like Kubeflow notebooks or something could, because like I don't know what information we would get from the batch working group on this one.
Yeah, I can definitely ask for the feedback, and I think I can also ask for the feedback for some folks from Jupyter Hub community. Like I think some folks on AWS involved in this space, so maybe they can give us some feedback on those storages, how they're managing it. But as like what I would say, there is no really standardization, unfortunately.
Yeah.
How the file system has been managed, right, for those type of workload.
One question I have is serving considered like an interactive use case?
Yes.
Okay. So like something like VLLM or LLMV might be helpful here and also giving us requirements. It might be different from Jupyter, obviously, but
Yeah, definitely.
Do we know if there are like a lot of challenges on serving side for file system management? Yeah, maybe Johan, since you've been involved in some of the working group serving discussions, are there any file system based conversations happening there?
Not in the community, not in the working group serving community yet. There are some discussions around caching, but not at the file system level. But you know, there are some open source solutions that open source file system solutions that are designed for AI workloads. But I don't know if that's, I don't think that's a standard yet. Yeah, we can share with the group and see if others have opinions on this.
I think it makes sense also to get like input from really like those other projects which are near, because I mean they are technically the ones who are would consume in the end. So basically those projects would be the user of this of those, and they might also potentially have some input. And I think it's easier to come by a community member from another project than to come by requirements from end users. We have 3 minutes left. I think it doesn't make sense to jump into the next discussion. What I would ask of each and everyone for the discussion for next week, to think about the graduation process that we quickly discussed of shoulds to must, and also how new requirements can be added in the future, so that we can have a healthy discussion there next week. On the side, thanks everyone for joining and for all of the input. I know this is there are a lot of topics which are hard to grasp, because we are basically trying to build a standard for bleeding edge, which will always be a dance on a needle. And thanks for all of your effort, and talk to you in 1 week time.
Thank you, Mario.